Family Matters. Welcome to another episode from your show, Family Matters. This show, as I always mention, is geared towards every single member of the family. Today's episode is a very special one. The first reason why this is special, that the topic is very intriguing and very special to many families. Understanding teens' brain. The second reason why this is special, that I'm very privileged and honored to have my friend and co-servant Silvia Farag with me today. Silvia is family counselor, parenting counselor, and many other things, including that she's in charge of a very large women service. I'm very happy to have Silvia today. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Hani.
Thank you. And right away, I would like to begin the hour because this is a long topic and I hope we can cover it. If not, you will be asked to join us again. And I hope you always be generous as you have been with me to come again. But teens' brain is a problem. I mean, if I start by saying a quote from every family, if a child or a teen is doing something wrong, the mom or dad say, it's okay, he's just a teen. This has to happen. So I want to start by asking you right away, what is adolescence?
Well, adolescence is actually a very exciting time. A lot of growth is happening. So when we talk about adolescence, we typically refer to sixth graders here in the US to 12th graders. So from sixth to the end of high school. There may be no other stage in life that's more maligned than adolescence. Because when we think of our teens, the words that come to mind are usually moody, impulsive, risk-taking, self-centered. I mean, while that definitely presents that way, there's a lot happening and there's reasons for that. So it doesn't actually matter how smart our teens are or how well they scored on the SAT. Good judgment is simply something that they can't excel in quite yet during this stage of adolescence because the rational part of our teens' brains is not fully developed until the age of 25 or so. Right. So teens' brains just work differently. And that's why some of the parents tell you it's okay, they're just teens. So it's a beautiful period during adolescence.
Yeah. In the 50s, I read a quote about psychoanalyst Anna Freud, Sigmund Freud's daughter, proposed that teens are attempting to divorce their parents, cutting their ties to the family so that they can move on with their lives. And that takes me to our second point, and as important as the first. Can you share some facts, basic facts regarding the teen's brain?
Yes. So that's an interesting quote because the connections between the emotional part of the brain and the decision-making center they're still developing, but not all at the same rate. So that's why our teens have this overwhelming emotional input. They can't explain really what they're thinking or why they're feeling that way. That's why you get a lot of grunts. And that's why parents feel isolated from their teens or shut out. But there's big and important changes happening during adolescence in their brains. It reaches their biggest size during adolescence, the brain. For girls, the brain reaches its biggest size around 11, and for boys, around 14. This difference doesn't necessarily mean that girls are smarter than boys, maybe slightly more mature, I don't know. But it's just the way it goes. And it continues to mature even when it's done growing. So though the brain may be done growing in size, it's not finished developing and maturing until the late 20s, like we said. So the front part of the brain, which is called the prefrontal cortex, is the last region of the brain to mature. This area is responsible for skills like planning, controlling impulses, prioritizing. Because these skills are still developing, teens are more likely to engage in risky, impulsive, emotional behavior without considering the potential results for their decisions. So there's a scientific reason why we think our kids are impulsive when they're teenagers.
Yeah.
But the brain is ready to learn and to adapt.
Mm-hmm. And from a neuroscience point of view, if I may add, it's almost the growth has come from the back to the front.
Right.
So as you said, the prefrontal cortex, which is really the two parts of the brain all the way to the front, which are responsible for self-control, among other things, are the last to grow. And the amygdala, which is right almost in the middle of the brain, or the limbic system, is the one that's well developed in teenage. And as you mentioned, this is the part that controls their feelings and emotions. And a lot of time they are working with their feelings and emotions, and rebellion can become one of the symptoms. And people will say they are very stubborn. And that takes me to a question that came, and I would like maybe you can address it early on in our talk today. I have a problem with my son. He is so stubborn, and I can't ask him to do something or listen when I try to convince him right or wrong. And the mom wrote that he is 5, but I would like, if that's okay with you, that you can address 5 and 15.
Well, 5, that's they're learning to explore. They're finding their way in the world. This is a very, very different stage, and actually a huge growth spurt as well in our toddlers. So I don't know that I'd call him stubborn. I think she's got a learner on her hands. And we just have to lean into that and promote that. So if he's not listening, maybe we approach our talking with him differently, such as rewarding, such as explaining. So if you have a smart 5-year-old, he may not just understand no. We have to explain, why don't you touch the fire? Because you can get burned. It's hot. You will get hurt. So we might have to take it a step further. I don't know about stubborn. Sounds like he's smart. And as far as the teenager, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. That part of the brain and this part of the brain have not connected yet. So you have a teenager that might appear stubborn. He or she, they're still processing and learning why I shouldn't, for example, run across the street with my headphones on without looking both ways. I see it happen all the time. But the stubbornness that we see is just almost the inability to process things with empathy and understanding just yet. It's still immature in that brain.
And if I were to take the word stubborn and apply it to a teenage, are you going to still call it stubbornness? And if so, what is the reason for it? Or it has a different name altogether?
I don't think I'd call it stubbornness, and I don't love that label, because we're all different learners, right? We learn things differently and at different rates. But for a teenager, I would almost give them a pass, because it's not that they're not listening to you or that they don't want to do what you're saying. They're just incapable of showing you they understand why. The critical thinking is just starting to develop. The understanding and the empathy is in its infancy stage with our adolescents. So we have to keep doing what we do by being good influencers in our families' lives, by constantly making connections with them, no matter how much we think they don't want us there. They don't. I have a teenager, 15 and a half. Some days he grunts, some days he's talkative. It just depends on his mood. And it's not because he doesn't want to answer mom or mom is annoying. He's just not processing it. He's either tired or too stressed, because believe it or not, teen brains are very susceptible to stress because it's all feelings and emotions and hormones. Or he's just not in the mood. And I can't take it personal. I have to respect this part of his life.
And let me ask you, I'm going to say a sentence and I want to see if you agree and if you agree or disagree, please explain. If I say adolescents may seem rebellious, but they often crave their parents' affection or approval.
Absolutely agree with that. 100% agree with that statement. Yes, our teens get a very bad rap. They are often stereotyped as rebellious, but they are engaging in risky behaviors that honestly, if we promote those behaviors correctly, that builds resilience in them and they become resilient adults. We can't choreograph successes and remove all kinds of obstacles for them. We have to allow them to take the risk to step out of their comfort zone, to grow, to fail, and to get back up again. There's this beautiful book called The Blessing of a Skinned Knee. It's exactly what it's about. We can't keep, coddling and stunting their growth. So I wouldn't say they're rebellious. They are exploring, but it has to be within our guardrails. That's it. We are the guardrails.
Yeah. And this book, actually, you just quoted, one of the things that demonstrates very well is the idea that parents are asked to produce people who are going to struggle in the world and not to have everything given to them as a grant or a bonus. And because of that, helping them to persevere, and the word you used even more rightly, being resilient, is really what's all about good parenting. Because if everything I made it so easy and I solved the math question and I tell him the answer to every problem, I'm also taking away from that kid the manhood or the being a real lady in the future.
Yes. Our kids grow to become resilient adults under the care and context of a healthy, caring parent. And a healthy, caring parent does not mean that we do everything for our son or we do everything for our daughter or we don't want them to fail they will never know how to get back up in the face of adversity. And we know growing up that life is not going to be that way. So if we remove the struggle, they will not grow. We will stunt their growth. So I really hope that all the parents listening understand that. It's hard to watch a child fail and fall, but if you want them to understand how to get back up again, you have to allow it and be there for them when they get up from their fall. It's almost like, when you take laps in a pool and you're swimming and you're taking the laps and then you reach out to touch the wall to make sure it's there, but you can't see. So that way you know when to turn again. We, mom and dad, are that wall.
Yeah. Yeah, we are that, and we are the shoulders of the highway so they don't go flipping to the side. There is one word you mentioned that I would like to pick on again, which is sometimes our kids are picked on or made fun of or belittled or egged on by their peers. And I would like to learn what is the idea itself or the concept of being egged on by peers and how that lead and where us as parents and educators, where's our role?
So, there's this idea that we think our children are going to cave to peer pressure, that they are going to be influenced by everybody they come into contact with. I want to tell you that us as parents and leaders have more influence than we think. We have more influence in our hands, in our little fingers, than we do in all the kids at school. Because the seeds that we plant are the voices that they hear when they're faced with that decision. So we are the most important role models our kids have. No matter what you think, they are not listening, or they didn't respect what we said, or they didn't hear anything that we said. Sure, their friends are important to them, but the way we behave, the way we fulfill our responsibilities, the way we deal with stress and adversity and things that go wrong, the way we deal with problems, this is going to have the long lasting effect on our kids' lives. They are watching and they're always learning. So they're sponges absorbing what happens at home. Everything begins here. Before church, the first church that they attend is their home. The first school they attend is their home. It's mom and dad and how we do life.
And I like that very much, that to the extent I'm tempted to add, I think us parents, sometimes we sell ourselves very short, and we think that we are not important in our kids' lives because sometimes they made us feel this way.
Mm-hmm.
And we sort of go on in our cocoon, and we think, oh, my kids don't listen to me, I'm not important, and we lose the place where God have created us for, which is the shoulders of the highway, the belt of the car, not to have an accident, when to say no and how to say no and when to say no, and how to really tell them to be disciplined when time comes. And I'm very worried about some new parenting ideas that really becoming so permissive because they are worried that the world will tell our kids that we are bad parents, and hence we are letting go of many of the right things that we're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm. So we are foregoing our responsibilities and our God-given duties so we can be the cool, permissive parent that gets approval from the world, the secular world. But what about above? So I can't tell you how many times I've been called the meanest mom in the world because of the answer no. That's fine. My job is to be able to say no, to take away, to teach. So discipline doesn't necessarily mean punishment. Discipline, it means to disciple, to teach. So just what you said, Dr. Hani, permissive parenting, the authoritative parenting, the authoritarian parenting, you know what I'm trying to say.
Yes,
these are not the right styles. When God was authoritative, not authoritarian. Right? God the Father is authoritative. He gives the commandments and gives us the love, endless love and forgiveness, and is always there when we're ready to come back. It's the same concept for us. We have to give our children the rules, the teachings, the way to the kingdom, and always there for them when they mess up, when they fail, when they fall, and they will. And this is the way healthy adults are built. So those are the 7 C's of resilience, actually. That's a scientific fact. It's not rooted in my opinion or it is a biblical point of view, but it is actually a scientific theory of positive thinking, the 7 C's of resilience. That's how you build up resilient children.
And being non-permissive parents has also scientific background.
Yeah.
Our children in that age are not able to have a good self-control yet. They are thinking more with their emotions, and the limbic system is controlling them, not the prefrontal cortex. So I am their prefrontal cortex for occasions. And if I decline my role as a dad, or you decline your role as a mom, to be that prefrontal cortex until they remodel their brain and they prune into that beautiful teen's brain that we all hope to see, we are going to deviate them into a very permissive, weak style of an adult in the future who will not be a good parent, will not be a good father or a mother or a leader in their own right.
Yes. So it's a perfect way of thinking. My kids were on a retreat a few months ago with Abuna Peter, and his theme was staying salty in a sugar-coated world. And at first I was confused by it. And then of course I understood Matthew, but they get everything instantly anyway. right? What good does that do? There is no waiting. They don't have to learn patience. They don't have to learn self-control. They don't even know how to budget money. I don't know about your kids, but my kids don't deal with cash. They deal with apps. So they don't even know the value of money and exchanging and change, and not yet, at least.
Yeah.
So yes, we have to be that critical thinking, that judgment for them, the voice constantly in their heads. If we are permissive and allowing them to do whatever they want, so we can be the get approval from the world, then you have a child who is of the world.
Yeah.
And I don't think you're doing any favors for your kids that way. It's easier, definitely, but since when was the easy way the right way?
Right. Exactly. There is a question that came. I'm going to summarize it because it really went into an area of voting. Do we allow our children to know whom we vote for? Should we tell them what to vote about? Or should we just give them the process and let them discover on their own? It's a long question that I'm trying to ask you if this is still related to your topic.
Well, again, they do all the learning at home. I don't know why we wouldn't tell our children about the voting process. If they have questions, I believe you should certainly answer them. And if they are interested in the voting process, either you can be the voice and explain to them how it goes, or they're going to go ask Alexa or Google or whatever. So whatever answer they're seeking, they will find it easily and instantly. So I think, I mean, to answer the question broadly, yes, I would explain how the voting system works and what the beauty of voting and the rights of this country are, and why I vote the way I vote. That doesn't necessarily mean they have to vote that way, but you can also explain why you do what you do. I love conversations. I love constantly talking, constantly connecting. If my child asks me something that I may not be comfortable answering, I will still have a conversation with that child. The learning happens with those questions. If you turn them away, they're going to ask you less and less.
Yeah.
So my answer is a resounding yes. Talk to your kids.
And I think also, like any other question, the voting will apply to the same answer. Explain your principles to your child. Explain why you are giving money to the poor. Explain why are you voting the way you're voting, and what are the principles of the party you are giving your vote to, and how does it apply to your principles or values or ethics or morals or biblical values or whatever you are standing upon. And I think that by itself leaves your child to grow, to make his or her own opinion. But at least you have given them, it's not, the majority is not always right. We have seen Gandhi standing alone when everybody was telling him you're crazy, and he was right. We saw Christ and everybody was wrong. Everybody was saying crucify him. So we need to tell our children, not because the majority is voting one way, you must follow the majority. You have to follow your ethics, your faith, your beliefs, your values, your family culture, everything like that. And then you can vote.
Right. Everything should be grounded in our values in anything that we do, but they should also see that come through. So to answer the question, yes, that's a beautiful answer.
All right, I want to move to an area where I think there isn't one family that has a teenage. Either they would ask the question or they will fight with the answer.
I know what this is.
My kids are, they like the peers, they don't like us, they don't like our opinion, they will never lead. In other words, who influence our kids more, peers or parents?
So I think, in my opinion, whether you're very involved with your child or not, that has a profound influence more than anything else. So my son takes the train to school. He takes 2 trains and a shuttle to school. He's a full-blown commuter. He's been commuting since 8th grade, right? That was very difficult for me. But I told him over and over and over again, I have done and will continue to do everything to get you to understand the weight of your decisions and your choices. And all it takes is 1 second of a bad decision, just not thinking it through, to change your life and the trajectory of all of our lives, everyone who loves you. So that has more influence on him than getting on the train and whoever's telling, hey, just try it, or think about this. It's cool. Like all the cool kids do it. He thinks twice. My voice is in his head. So who has more influence? Imagine that voice wasn't there, or that annoying voice sometimes that he hears over and over again. So in my opinion, and I think also there's a lot of research out there, but the kids that grow up in the context of caring homes, their parents have a profound influence and will hopefully have a long-lasting effect on them when they're out there in school, among their peers, when their friends are engaging in risky behaviors. They may think twice.
Okay.
So.
Next area, as hot and as difficult and as common to be fought with in every home, is the social media. Screen time, video games, and all kinds of social media apps. How does it affect our teens' brains?
So, I think it's happening in both good ways and bad ways. We can't fight it. As much as I had a hard time just orienting my portrait before we started the show. The technology for me doesn't come as easy. For them, it is what they do. It's natural. It's how they exchange money. It's how they study. It drives me crazy that they don't have books. Everything is online. So we can't fight this. We have to lean into it and learn how to protect them. I think it's in both good ways and bad ways. The bad ways, I think, it's got, what do these peer relationships now look like? Because it's different from when I was with my friends side by side, looking at them in the face. These were my friendships. We were actually together in person, getting to know each other. These kids, it's like this round the clock ability to text, to engage, to snap, right? Snapchat drives me crazy, but it's how these kids text, actually. The message disappears on Snapchat. So a lot of parents are very fearful about Snapchat, but we fear what we don't know. So the negative effects on their brains is that it's got this, the connection is empty. So there's this sense of loneliness that happens in these kids, negative aspects on body image. And a lot of this really changes what it means to be an adolescent from when we were. We know that their brains, the adolescent brain, is very highly sensitive to rewards, right? That's the part of the brain that lights up when they get social feedback. So every time they get a like or a love on their post, they get this hit of dopamine, right? But it's empty. It goes away. So they feel good for a second, and then it goes away. So they seek more. There's a great book, Dopamine Addicted World. Everything that these kids do now is looking for that next like, that next and that's what they call connection. So while we can't fight it, the brain itself is, like you mentioned, neuroplasticity is highly plastic and sensitive to its environment. So it's flexible and it adapts. The only way that we can try to help balance this is by giving them those guardrails, the high waist shoulders. So limit the screen time. Don't take it away completely. Our kids today are almost neurobiologically incapable of reading War and Peace. It's not going to happen. War and Peace, the book was this thick. I had a hard time getting through it. It's not because they're lazy or unmotivated. It's just not what they do. That's what their generation does. So don't take it away. Understand it and put some guardrails around it. Like my kids right now are on a retreat, and I can't tell you how many requests I got. More time for this, more time for that, because they have screen time, and I will not approve it. You're on a retreat, figure it out. So I don't think it's something that's necessarily terrible. It can be good with like anything else, but in a healthy balance.
Cool.
With watchful eyes too.
Yeah. If I may add also,
Yes.
some of these apps, and it was studied by functional MRI, results, because as you said, there is a secretion of dopamine and GABA and other things and other neurotransmitters. So eventually it caused depression, actually. And there is a major wave of depression that occurred during COVID. And when they studied it, they found that our kids were sitting in front of the screen much longer time than biking or swimming or going around the block or going to school even. Mm-hmm. So we need to know that depression wasn't something known in this age until the screens became a phenomenon. So we need to make our children understand. We are not exactly trying to limit the screen time because we are just tyrants and we are annoying parents, but because it can affect their development. It actually can, so much dopamine all the time without any dips and ups and downs actually can make the brain almost wired all the time that the development is messed up. Second, it can cause depression. Third, there is a lot of spine problems that occurred also during the COVID 2 years, 19 and part of 20, that the kids are humped down looking at the screen all the time. And then there is something called also the silent eye syndrome that came about also during COVID, that a lot of kids they start using eyeglasses much longer and much more than you and I or anyone who's playing soccer or going out with her friends. The other thing I want to tell parents is you are responsible. Don't let go of your own job. Your kids do not know what is right and what's not right for them. Do not let go of your job. God have appointed you as a steward for these children, and those are royal children. By you putting some constraints on time and how many hours per day or per weekend or whatever, that doesn't make you a bad parent. It just makes you a conservative, careful mom or dad. And remember, I hope whoever is listening from a Christian background, you want your kids to know God as well. And unfortunately, a lot of these apps are, to say that the least, they are the worst thing related to heavenly creatures. So please do not let go of your job as a parent. If you know that this is wrong and your gut feeling is telling you wrong and you read something that it's scientifically wrong, then it's probably wrong. Your kids do not have a prefrontal cortex well developed yet, so they are going out with their emotions. And because of that, all of a sudden, they can't decide what to do. So let's get to the core of why Silvia Farag is our guest speaker today. What are we going to do now with our teens and teens' brain? And you put it very nicely in the beginning. You said this is a beautiful period. How can we make it beautiful? How can we benefit from it? How can we make our kids to remodel their brain, as the word that I am quoting you, in order to become good people?
There is, again, we're the greatest influence. So there is so much that we can do, right? So choose for our kids who like to engage in risky behaviors. I have 3 kids, all very different. My oldest loves outdoorsy, fast things. He got an ATV recently, and he wants to get up there and fly up that mountain. I don't think he'd even care if he'd had to wear a helmet or not. But we can't say, no, no, no. This is who he is. He's an athlete. He needs to go out there and he needs to be outside, and he enjoys it. He enjoys exploring. He is definitely more of a risk taker than the other 2. We have to choose those activities for them as his parents. And with those activities, okay, you want this ATV. He earned it in a couple of years. We bought it for him. There's rules around it. This is not something that is a toy. This is actually a responsibility. And the minute you don't show that you're responsible, it gets taken away. We have to help them take those healthy risks, have new and different experiences. So push them out of their comfort zone, help them learn their identity, and it's okay to be different, right? I get a lot of, I have a 13-year-old daughter, and she's got a wonderful group of friends at school. They have sleepovers all the time. And I am that parent. It's just something for me personally. I never felt that sleepovers were edifying to friendships. So my answer is always no, a blanket no. No matter how much I love that family, we just don't do sleepovers. I'll pick you up at 10 o'clock. The answer is no. There's nothing that you need to do at night with your friends in their home. So while we pick and choose, also I think explaining to them. You can't just say no, but sit down and explain and talk things through with them. Hey, I feel strongly about sleepovers because, and I can't say yes to some and no to others. Please respect how I feel about this. And she does, when I sit and explain it, but I'm not going to be the tyrant. I'm like, no, absolutely not. So when I respect my child, they respect what we're talking about in a perfect world, right? Yeah. I also want you to talk through decisions step by step with your teenagers. Invite them into the conversation. Ask them about possible courses of action, right? So what would you choose? Talk through potential consequences, like encourage them to weigh the outcomes that are positive and weigh the outcomes that are negative. Invite them in the process. I don't always know everything. Believe it or not, my kids, I learn a lot from them. And when I invite them into the process, you're promoting critical thinking. You're promoting understanding and logic. You're helping this part light up a little bit, right? The prefrontal cortex. And family routines. I cannot stress this enough. This is like a dying thing in the States. It gives your child's life some structure. We don't do phones at the table. It is so hard for them to keep, and I have repeated it 1,000 times. That's a rule. We pray together as a family. We don't eat every day together. That just doesn't happen with the schedules that we have. But these routines are so important for family and for structure and for your kids more than you think. Give them boundaries and opportunities and allow them those opportunities to negotiate some boundaries. Okay, well, if I X, Y, and Z, then can we talk about this again? Mom or dad, I encourage you to say yes. Always talk. Keep talking to them. It's so important, even when they don't want to. You give them their space, but they know that they can come back and talk to you, right? Young people, they need the guidance. They need the limit setting from their parents and from their servants and other adults. I want you to offer frequent praise to your kids. I don't want you to offer empty praise, but I want, I really respect how you handled that situation. I'm proud of you. Not you're so beautiful or you're so smart. I respect what you just did. That was wow. I'm very proud of you. They feel it because they are seeking your approval. And we're talking about teenagers here. And this promotes this desired behavior that we're looking for in them. And this reinforces those pathways that we want to connect in our child's brain. So being a positive role model, no matter what, we have to understand that our behavior shows our children what behavior we expect. And we're human. When we don't take care of ourselves and manage our stress, we mess up. So what happens when I mess up? I apologize to my child. They deserve that. There's a line in Parenting Toward the Kingdom, and I often quote that I love. Our children are icons of Christ, and we have to venerate them. Apologizing to your child is not weakness, that's strength and humility, which was what we want them to be, and we need to model that. Stay connected with your kids. It's very, very important. Even if you don't understand what they're saying, because with their, all their new words and stuff, stay connected. You don't have to be cool. You have to be connected. Be open and approachable. And if you don't know how to do it, ask for help. There's somebody I'm sure that you admire that is very open and seems to have a connection with her kids. Ask them, hey, what do you think? There's some great books out there too that I can recommend about these things. But I want you to understand that sleep is very important for your teens. So when they're sleeping in, it's not because they're lazy or unmotivated. There is so much happening in their brains. They need the extra sleep. They sleep hard and they sleep a lot, more than they were toddlers and more than they will be when they're adults. This is the time where they're sleeping more. There's a lot of changes in their body that you could speak to more about hormones and the brain development. They need their rest. And this will also help with their mood. So encourage empathy too. I know I'm going through these quickly, but there's so much. This is really the core of why we're here today. Talk about your feelings. Talk about your feelings. I know it's cliche-ish, but hey, highlight the fact that everybody has different perspectives, right? Well, why, Mom? Everybody else can do this. I know that, Alex. They may do that at school, but in our house, this is how we do it. Just keep repeating that. Don't yell it. Repeat it. Emphasize the immediate long-term consequences of their actions. Immediate and long-term, because they don't think that far ahead. They're impulsive, remember? So you might have to actually explain to them what those long-term consequences of their actions will be. For example, my son didn't start his sophomore year off strong, period. He was not focused. Such a gifted kid. Freshman year, excellent, performed to the best of his ability. He did not. And I explained to him 100 times, it's going to hurt you later. It's not going to be easy to take those finals. Okay, I'm just going to study harder. He had to learn the hard way, unfortunately. And now hustling and doing his work and understanding he can't fall behind like that again. So, and try to match your language level to that of your child's understanding, right? So we're not going to just sit there and talk about the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex and explain these things, but to their understanding. We have to meet our kids at their level. Don't talk at them, talk with them, engage them, right? And help them develop these decision-making and problem-solving skills. You got to invite them in that process. I know that we said that. Role model, role model, role model. Model it for these kids. There's so much that we can do as parents. We're the most powerful tool you have as a mom or a dad is modeling.
Very nice. Very well said. Nothing to add, but if I may, I was discussing with Silvia before the topic about the research that we both read, Dr. Daniel Romer from University of Pennsylvania, where they did brain imaging, and they found that there are certain regions of the teen's brain that are associated with reward are generally developed much more quickly than inhibition. And that's what basically one of the most important things that Sylvia mentioned is giving reward, giving praises, encourage, and explain why you are encouraging, not because of a character. I mean, being smart is not something he developed or she does not have. So you tell the person you are smart and your sister is not smart, but the behavior. This is where the reward that you want to give. I'm very proud of you because I saw you very kind to the woman walking in the street. That was a very nice thing that you have done, that you carried with her back. You praised a behavior, an act, not a character, because what can he do if he's not as good as his sister in math, for example? I like very much what you're saying about being a role model. I think we parents, sometimes we ask the impossible of our kids and we do not move it, as the Bible said, with one of our little fingers. And to really ask your kids to stop screen time, and mom and dad are not leaving their phones and it's almost becoming a third hand, is not really going unnoticed. Your kids may be very well disciplined and you will say, yes, mom, and they give you the phone, but in the back of their minds, they're saying, whom are you kidding? You are holding the phone and you are looking at Facebook for the last 6 hours. So please, us parents, we need to role model Christ in order, as St. Paul said, imitate me as I imitate Christ. I also like the point that Sylvia mentioned about the teens' mood swings. Please understand your kids' brains are changing, and the mood swings is not because they are crazy or they are undisciplined or they were rowdy or they were not raised well, but unfortunately, there are hormones and things that none of us understand very well are playing yo-yo with them, and neurotransmitters are fluctuating, and it gives them excitement one time and it gives them, very down and being apathetic almost another time. So please be kind on your kids, as Sylvia said, because those are beautiful creatures. And if we raise them well, we're expected to have heirs of the kingdom of heaven. And the job of this program is not just for you to raise a teacher or a doctor, but rather to raise heirs, inhabitants of heavens. And we do not do that simply, and it's not an easy job as a parent. And I love that Sylvia is always using examples from her own house of the 3 children that she has. And she is not just as a counselor, but as a parent, she's giving her own advices and experience. And to me, that sometimes is more precious than just somebody read something and coming to just tell you about it. I want to, in the last few minutes, Sylvia, ask your experience both professionally and parentally. What do you do if you and your husband disagree, or 2 parents, I don't want to pick on you, but disagree on something that a teenage is doing? One agrees that he or she can, let's say, the sleepover, and the other one doesn't agree. And by the way, I happen to agree with you. I feel like the sleepover is overrated, and I think in today's market where things can, unfortunately, they may touch themselves or each other in a bad way, and one of them may have a sexual experimentation, and which can give him sexual confusion, doesn't really make a big deal. Why are we allowing our children to stay behind overnight and usually unsupervised. But let's say I am your husband and we kind of disagree on this. And what do you do? I mean, now your daughter, Alex, she's trying to, take my side now.
Mhm. Well, I'm hoping that we don't disagree in front of the kids, because that's when they sniff out the opportunity and, they will get in there and they will break you down. So the most important thing is that we're allowed to disagree, but amongst each other as a team. So we're all human, and sometimes that comes out in front of the kids inevitably. But I think being a united front and coming to an agreement respectfully and lovingly is the most important thing you can do as parents, as a team. So talk with your husband. I could tell you from my personal experience, my husband promotes independence, where I am that mom who will drive 50 times around so they don't cross the street because it's busy and someone may not be paying attention. He wants them to learn and learn the hard way and promotes that rugged independence. And I don't. So he respects how I feel when I'm with him, and I respect how he feels when they are with him. Period. They are learning a lot from both of us. So remember that his strengths are not necessarily mine. And just because we don't agree, his perspective is still very valuable. So when he tells me we can't keep coddling them, getting on the train is like a moving bus, Silvia. He's going to be fine. And there's other students on there. Had I not respected that, we'd still be driving him half an hour every day to school. So coming to an understanding in like anything in every other relationship, you have to talk about things. You have to bring your opinions to the table and do it as a united front. Do not argue in front of the kids. Do not accuse in front of the kids. Do not do this in front of the kids. Well, your dad doesn't agree, but I'm the boss. It doesn't work like that. Please speak to one another, mom and dad at home, come to a mutual decision and a mutual understanding, and then let the kids in on it. But if you do this in front of the kids, it will promote them not respecting your boundaries, them not respecting your rules, them not respecting your limitations. If you guys can't agree, why would they agree with you? So it's super important. And no, you're not always going to agree with your husband or your wife, but you have to agree to be loving and respectful with one another.
Yeah. And please, parents, do not ever tell your kids, even if you disagree with your husband, that dad is wrong or mom doesn't know these things. You are not benefiting from that schism, by the way. No one is benefiting, actually. And believe me, even if your kids side with you, you are not exactly raising very healthy men and ladies in the future. This schism is just breaking them from inside and giving them a lot of insecurities that you don't know how it's going to surface in what way, as maybe a bad parent or a bad wife or a bad husband. Silvia, I don't know how to thank you. This is a plethora of knowledge and experience, and I'm very, very grateful, and I'm sure my audience as well. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a lot, and I hope if there's any questions that we can answer them, get to them somehow later. But thank you so much for having me. This is a very important topic. God bless your service, Dr. Hani.
Thank you very much, and I hope when I call upon you another time, I'm
always
listening to you, because really your presence makes a big difference in this program. So again, thank you very much for attending today. I hope this was useful. I pray and I hope that you become the parent God wants you to be. May God bless you all. Hope to see you soon. God bless. Thank you.